The Russian Caucasus have seen their share of trouble in recent years, and they still might not make it onto too many people's top tourist destinations. But they'd be missing out, because this really is one of the most spectacular areas in the whole of the country. Towering mountains and endless valleys are home to a diverse people who'll bend over backwards to make you feel welcome. I was heading for the Republic of Carachaevo-Cherkessia, and I couldn't wait. This is one of Russia's smallest and youngest republics, but it's a place that's steeped in history. Much of the landscape hasn't changed in millennia, and some local customs have been around almost as long.
This may be the 21st century, but this is still an area which really values its traditions. The birth of a son here is a huge event, and they celebrate it in the same way they've been doing for centuries.
As the head of the household, it's the grandfather's job to help prepare the boy for his journey into manhood. And in an area where everyone grows up riding horses, the gift of a handmade whip is both practical and highly symbolic.
Whenever my grandson goes on a trip to faraway places, he will take the whip with him as a reminder of his grandfather, his clan, his country and his people. It's like his soul.
And it's a real work of art. The whip is made by a master craftsman from strips of wild goat skin, meant to symbolize strength. And every time the skin is wound, the maker asks God for blessings on the boy.
This is a very special family tradition. Ruslan teaches his son Orman here, and each one of these bindings represents a wish for the boy's future life.
The whip is attached to a handle that Valery has cut from a forest tree at dawn, when it's supposed to have magical powers. But the finished article is only presented when the boy turns 9 years old, and it's deemed he can handle the responsibility.
This is one of the most precious things that a father and a grandfather can give to his son. And Omar here has had his whip for the last 5 years, and it's something that he'll keep with him for the rest of his life.
But it takes more than just a whip to make the man. Everyone of rank has always had a set of fine clothes here. Yelena has been designing traditional clothes here for almost 20 years, and she's got something to suit every shape and size. There are national costumes here for almost all the Republic's diverse ethnic groups, from a Karachay dress to a Circassian coat. The work is incredibly colourful and detailed, and each piece is worked on extensively to make it as authentic as possible. And that means they're as difficult to get into now as they were 100 years ago. But it's not just the ladies who got to stand out from the crowd, as I was about to find out. You'd certainly be difficult to miss in this headgear.
So, apparently this is the glamorous costume of the traditional Caucasian bridegroom. Now, all I need is to find the right lady to fit this beautiful costume too. Where could she be?
But before you can go courting in this area, there's another rite of passage that all the boys have to go through. This is wrestling Caucasian style. In towns and villages all across the region, boys grow up grappling. And you'd better turn in a good performance if you've got a coach like Sagid.
Oh, he got his head smacked. Take no prisoners here, do they? And you get a smack around the head for your troubles as well.
This type of wrestling is unique to this area. Back during Soviet times, there were more than a dozen regional tournaments annually, and elements of the Karachaev style can be found in modern Greco-Roman and freestyle wrestling. And traditionally, there was much more at stake than just bragging rights.
If you want to marry a girl from another mountain village, a bridegroom should come to her place. He has to fight. If he wins, the girl will be his. If not, the girl will stay at home. This fight dates from time immemorial.
But if you lost, you had to slink back to your village with your tail between your legs. And of course, any visitor was duty-bound to join in the fun.
You know when you know something is about to happen and it's just never gonna go well? Okay, if this is the last time you see me, you'll know why.
Go, go, go!
I'm not sure if that was a... Did I lose that or did I win that? Sure.
Okay, I think that was officially a draw. Time for round 2.
Go, go, go!
Go, go, go!
I think I actually won that. Oh, no way.
You had to throw him through the hip.
Enough for me, I think. I'll leave it to these boys who've been doing it all their lives.
I knew all that time spent watching Hulk Hogan and friends hadn't really been wasted. And once I'd got my breath back, I had a rendezvous to make back in the capital, Cherkessk.
So I've found some traditional clothing, and I've even proved myself in deadly one-on-one combat. So apparently now I'm ready to meet some of the local ladies. And supposedly the most beautiful and talented ones are right here in Cherkessk's National Theatre.
Music and dance are really at the heart of Karachay culture, and this theatre is the home of the region's best dance troupe. It may look like a spectacular routine, but apparently it's all inspired by some particularly sprightly shepherds.
They used to dance it up in the mountains. That's when they drove their sheep to pastures. And their movements were jerky and energetic. That's what they had to do to keep steady in the mountains. And that's how this dance was born.
But not all the dances go at 100 kilometers an hour, and the troupe also have some dignified, slower numbers, which I was about to disrupt.
Oh, this is going to end badly. Okay, I'm gonna watch him. I'm sorry in advance. Zack. About as elegant as an elephant here. I'm really glad you aren't looking at my feet at the moment, because this may be a slow dance, but it's still really complicated.
It was time for me to make a hasty exit. It was pretty obvious that I wasn't going to land a date with my dancing skills, so I decided that I'd be better off focusing on Carachaevo-Cherkessia's more scenic beauties. There's almost too much to take in this region, but if you want a real idea of what it has to offer, a visit to the Teberdinsky State Nature Reserve is a must. Springs and waterfalls run through deep gorges, and everything is surrounded by the towering mountains. There's a huge variety of rare flora and fauna here, and if you don't spot your favorite animal in the wild, you can check out the park's zoo. There's plenty to see, including wild pigs, the local Karachay deer, and some real heavyweight residents. And they can get a little touchy if the cameras get too close.
I'm a little bit wary of being quite this close to an almost half-ton animal here. Lucy is only 2.5 and she's very rare. It's a European bison. There haven't been any wild bison living in this area for almost 80 years. But the park here is still hoping that maybe they can breed them. Hopefully if our big male over there in the corner starts paying attention.
This is certainly a place to come if you like to get away from it all. But history buffs won't be disappointed either. Just a short drive from the reserve in the mountain foothills are the remains of a city which is said to date back over 2,000 years. This is the ruined city of Mas, and it's the former capital of the indigenous Alan tribe.
According to archaeological sources, the Alan people came here in the 3rd century BC. But other sources claim it was the 1st century AD. Alan tribes occupied a vast area stretching from the Argun River to what is now the Krasnodar territory.
Most of the city was destroyed in the 14th century, but some buildings are still here, including the oldest functioning chapel in the country.
As I've already told you, at the territory of the ancient settlement, 3 temples were situated. This is the southern. It was fully restored in the 19th century.
All restored and
The top was damaged.
And further into the city, there's a beautifully preserved cathedral dating back to the 10th century.
There's not too much left inside this ancient cathedral, but this original baptismal font has been here for more than 1,000 years. And when the town was being converted, the people would come through here as pagans, receive the blessing from the priest, and leave through here as new Christians.
But the churches aren't the only religious symbols that remain in this area. It might only have been discovered in the late 1990s, but one icon has had visitors trekking up the hillsides in their thousands.
You definitely feel like you're atoning for some sins coming up this way. I don't know, maybe that's the point.
And just across the ledge is the picture that everyone comes to look at.
Well, it's definitely worth the trek. Now, the locals believe that this painting of Jesus is the oldest icon in the whole of Russia. It dates back to the end of the 10th century, the beginning of the 11th century, and it's made of egg-based paint. And you can see how popular a spot it is for pilgrims by all the candles here and the coins that people have left. Really amazing that it's still here after all this time.
I'd already experienced so much in Karachay-Cherkessia that it was difficult to believe there was still more to do. But high up in the mountains, I was told there was one place that was literally out of this world. Karachay-Cherkessia offers some of Russia's most stunning scenery. Up here you can barely hear a pin drop, and on a clear day you can see for thousands of kilometers in every direction. It's difficult to imagine a better spot to look up and admire the heavens.
It's not just nature lovers who are at home here in the stunning Caucasian mountains. The area is also a vital one for scientific research. And just behind me, you can see the largest telescope in the Eastern Hemisphere.
Walking through the doors of the dome, it's difficult not to be impressed by the sheer size of this instrument. It was completed in 1975 and was the biggest optical telescope in the world until 1993.
We can study with our telescope very distant quasars, which have age maybe few hundred million years, starting from the start of from burning of our universe.
Right.
So we see the most distant objects in our universe.
Valeri's enthusiasm for his work is infectious. We talked about nebulas and galaxies, comets and asteroids, and he spent years observing them all. The scope's prime mirror is 6 meters in diameter, and there's a full-time team of engineers here to make sure it stays in prime condition and that everything moves smoothly.
So now we almost prepared all necessary for observing of astronomical objects. Dome is open.
Yep.
You see? The covers of main mirror also is open. And now the telescope is pointing on coordinates which our astronomers pass to the system of control of telescope.
The observatory continues to attract eminent scientists from across the globe, and on a clear night the results can be truly spectacular.
I almost feel like I could be in an old sci-fi film standing here in this huge dome, but this giant telescope continues to give more and more information about the universe, and that's down to some pretty impressive Soviet engineering and the pristine beauty of these Caucasian mountains.
But unsurprisingly, for most people who come here, the mountains are more about snowboarding than stargazing. The ski resort of Dumbai is one of the region's biggest tourist resorts, with some of the fastest ski slopes in the country. And to make sure it keeps growing and developing, organisers have brought in a little help from abroad. And I was heading up 3,000 metres to meet him.
Mike?
James?
Hi, so I found my American snowboarder in Dumbai. Fantastic. So, you are one of the men building this snowpark?
Exactly.
Would you mind showing us around a little bit?
You bet.
Mike's a Colorado native, so he knows a thing or two about life in the mountains. He's been designing ski parks in the Rockies for more than 10 years, and he and his team are working on a whole new set of ramps for the circuit.
So you're pushing all the snow up here to make the ramp?
Yes, I'm building what's called the deck right now. So basically when I do these landings, it's important to keep your wings open. Yeah. Because you want to keep what you're doing as flat as humanly possible. So I'm just shaving this down a little bit here. You can imagine coming over this on a snowboard and landing.
Mike kindly offered to show me the ropes. And anyway, I'm sure they've got plenty of insurance.
What do I need to know to keep us both safe?
All right, ejector seat is here.
Excellent,
No,
that's a useful one.
okay. Okay, there's your pedal to adjust your steering wheel.
Right, this one here.
Next one.
Not the accelerator.
Yep, so adjust that.
Okay.
Here's your handle for your blade.
Blades.
Okay, we have our track speed set at
6.
6. Okay.
Is that good?
And when we're ready, we will hit both of these and disengage our parking brake,
Okay.
and we'll be ready to go.
And off we go.
Yep. And
then you pray, and I attempt to do a little bit of snowcat driving.
Right.
The idea is to try to control the shovel at the front to get a nice roll of snow heading towards the ramp. Although this does take some practice.
Now try to push that snow towards the end.
Okay.
Okay. Just keep it on the ground.
Yep.
Keep your tracks straight. Now if we do this about 3,000 more times, you'll be good.
But with a little patient instruction, I was able to make some decent progress. Leaving Mike to make some hasty corrections to the course, I headed off to meet some other people helping to make Dumbai a safer place. And by that time, I was in serious need of them.
One thing about being up here in the mountains is you've got to be really careful about the sun, otherwise you end up with a face like a boiled lobster, rather like this. So I'm hoping that maybe these guys might be able to help me out a little.
Vitaly and Vladimir are two of Dumbai's rescue rangers, and of course most of the time they're dealing with far more important problems than people who've forgotten their sunscreen. And it wasn't long before they were called on to help an elderly skier after a fall.
This gentleman's been skiing for 50 years.
I finished.
And this is the first time he has an accident.
Everything will be fine.
Done it back in a little bit.
Please be careful.
They have to be ready to react at a moment's notice, but occasionally some emergency calls don't turn out to be quite as serious as they're made out to be.
Funny things do happen sometimes. There was the case of that girl who called us to say she needed urgent help. We speed full steam ahead across the mountains. We spot her and ask her what the matter is. She shows us a broken nail.
But sometimes there are injuries which have to be taken care of as quickly as possible, and that means getting to the bottom of the mountain fast.
So I'm going to be a victim.
Place your head right there.
Right. Okay. So, in this case,
Close to me.
my sunburn is obviously so bad that I'm going to have to be carried off the mountain to hospital. Luckily, we got these experienced guys to make sure I make it in one piece.
And once they've got the person strapped in, the team take off down the slopes at a serious rate of knots.
When you're not actually injured, it's quite fun, but you feel very safe and secure in this shuttle, and these guys can get down the whole mountain in under 3 minutes. So if you are injured, it's definitely good to know that they're around.
Fortunately, I was able to make it out of Dumbai the more relaxed way, on a ski lift. But before I left the Caucasus, I wanted to pick up a few presents. And in an area that's renowned for its sheep farming, it seemed wrong not to grab a few woolly souvenirs.
So you can see how lamb and mutton form the backbone of almost every family occasion. But that's just the start of our sheep's uses, because in houses all over this region, there are ladies turning this into these.
Yelena and her friends earn their living from their felt hats, and I was about to see how to make one from scratch.
Здравствуйте.
Hello.
The wool is cleaned and washed before being cut up into circles. Each one's enough for one hat, and then they're all checked for quality.
And now we put it to the table with the tap lights. The light shows where the wool may be thin, so they add little pieces to thicken it up.
And if it passes the test, it's time for the hard work to begin.
Let's take a hot water, add a powder,
Bit of washing powder.
then mix it, and moist our wooden circles.
Once it's been washed a second time, the wool is wrapped up in bamboo and thoroughly flattened out. The pressure was on now, as we'd attracted quite an audience, but everything did seem to be going quite smoothly, and we moved on to give the wool a final tenderising.
You've got to whack it, apparently, and that.
Because the fibre is being restricted, and felt became beautiful.
It takes a pretty good beating, but at last our felt was ready. It's then stretched out over a wooden dummy, and the excess is cut away.
So after a little over half an hour, we've got almost a finished article here. It's got to dry for a day, be decorated, and then you've got one multi-purpose Karachay wool felt hat.
But all that wool has to come from somewhere, and my final journey was to head out into the foothills to see the famous Karachay sheep. Like his father and grandfather before him, Tamerlan has been raised to be a shepherd, and every day at 5 a.m. he's out here grazing the sheep on these hills. They're a special breed that thrive out here on the tough mountain grasses, and at around $100 each, Tamerlan's in charge of some serious money.
Not the nicest way to travel, maybe. Okay.
Now, look.
The wool is incredibly thick. This is the special breed that's local to this region. And they're all dark. I mean, you can see that they're so important, the sheep, to this region. It's been a traditional way of life for hundreds and hundreds of years, and even now you can see that they still make a lot of clothing out of this lovely thick wool, like Tamerlan's cloak here. That all comes from his own sheep. And of course, unfortunately for this guy, the meat too is still very much a national dish.
But at least my new friend was going to live to bleat another day.
Now, I think we've bothered this little guy enough now, so go on, back you go. Oh. Ah. Little frisky, but none the worse for wear, I think.
Like the sheep, the shepherds are out here in all weathers, and warm, rainproof clothing is a must. And Tamerlan's cloak has the useful bonus of being too thick for a snake to bite through.
I'm going to boil to death in these clothes.
Of course, any shepherd here worth his salt is also a master horseman, which is where I've got a little catching up to do.
Your accelerator.
Gazda. What's in the middle in the Вот, ага. Иди прямо. Go on. Иди, let's go and see the sheep. Go on. Go on. Go on.
But after a while we did get going, and we trotted off back towards the stables and dinner. Tamerlan introduced me to his grandfather Kazim, a lifelong shepherd, father of 15 sons, and, according to his friends and family, the very last recipient of the Soviet Union's highest award for services to the state, the Order of Lenin. And when he's in the area, it's time to push the boat out. The local specialty is shashlik, a kebab of specially prepared lamb. And they're pretty proud of their meat round here.
A shish kebab made of locally produced marble mutton is tastier than that made of any other kind of mutton. I'm not trying to praise it simply because it's made in this region. This mutton is famous around the world.
It certainly looked good, and once I'd managed to skewer it, it was time for the grill. And it also seems that some kebabs here even have higher status than others.
So these ones are particularly special, apparently. You've got the kidney here and the meat that covers the kidneys, and this is supposed to be the most prestigious shashlik, what they get to the guest of honor. So this is the best of the best of the shashliks.
It wasn't long before everything was ready, and with my mouth already watering, we moved on to the dinner table.
Carnivorous feast.
The meal begins with a drink of sheep's yogurt, and then we were ready to tuck in. It seemed fitting to end my trip sharing a meal with the warm and generous people of this region. They'd invited me into their world and shared their traditions and their food with me.
So this shoulder bone is given to the guest to show them respect, and then the guest should give a little piece of meat back to each of his hosts. A very delicious Caucasian tradition.
Karachay-Cherkessia is a stunningly beautiful landscape, but this is also a place where hospitality really comes from the heart. I couldn't have been further away from home, but I felt completely comfortable here. It doesn't seem to matter who you are or where you're from. The people here will treat you like one of their own.